All right, let's jump into today's deep dive. We're going to untangle this whole world of copper, like the growing demand, the challenges India is facing, and the global power plays going on.
It's a fascinating story, and it's really crucial for, well, aspiring civil servants like you to grasp this because, well, you see, we're not just talking about, like, some commodity. It's a vital resource shaping global, economics and geopolitics.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's paint a picture here. Imagine a future, full of electric vehicles, wind turbines, solar panels. It's the greener tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But what do they all need?
Copper.
Copper. And tons of it.
And that's what's so fascinating, right? The very technologies we're relying on for, well, a sustainable future, they're the ones driving this incredible surge in demand for copper. It's the electrification of everything, and copper is, like, the key.
And that brings us to the first big challenge, right? The global copper crunch.
Yeah.
It's more than just a buzzword. It's a real concern.
It is, yeah. The U.S., for instance, they've gone as far as labeling copper a national security issue because they are heavily reliant on foreign sources. And this makes them, well, vulnerable, and it's causing them some serious anxiety.
A decline of 8% since 2018-19 in India's domestic copper production. That's more significant than I expected, I have to say. What's contributing to this dip in production?
So there are a few things at play here. You have Hindustan Copper Ltd., a major player in India experiencing its own production dips, but fundamentally India's copper reserves are, well, they're facing depletion, which, naturally impacts output. And all this is happening when global demand is, well, it's skyrocketing.
So it's almost like a perfect storm brewing. So as India's own copper production falters and global demand intensifies, what options are we left with?
Well, I mean, one obvious path is importing more copper, but you're right. It's not an ideal long-term solution. In fact, India's reliance on imports has already doubled in value. It's reached a staggering euro 26,000 crore in 2023-24. It's a huge financial burden and also, a strategic vulnerability.
So imports alone, it's not going to cut it. What else is India doing to, secure its copper supply for the future?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. India is taking a proactive approach by seeking out copper assets overseas. Think of it as like securing a seat at the table before the music stops.
So where's India looking to secure these copper assets?
They're setting their sights on, well, some key locations: Zambia, Chile, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC.
Okay, so this copper value chain, it's more complex than I realized. Could you maybe walk me through the key stages and, what makes each one so important?
Sure. So it all starts with, well, copper ore, which is mined from the earth. That ore is then processed and concentrated before it's shipped to smelters. Now, smelting is a critical step. It transforms that concentrate into an impure form of copper, what we call an anode. But to get the high purity copper, the kind we use in everything from wiring to electronics, well, that anode has to go through a final refining stage to produce a cathode, essentially pure copper ready for industrial use.
So each stage adds value, taking us from that raw ore to the copper we use every day. But what makes those overseas locations, Zambia, Chile, DRC, so attractive for India?
Well, they offer what India needs, right? High-grade copper deposits and environments that are, well, relatively favorable for mining. This means faster project development, which is, crucial given the urgency of the situation.
Speaking of fast development, India recently secured a massive 9,000 square kilometer block in Zambia. That's 6 times the size of Delhi. All that to explore for copper and cobalt. You're looking at a land 6 times the size of Delhi dedicated to copper exploration. And that tells you just how seriously India is taking this whole copper security issue.
It's a game changer, yeah. And to put it in context, Zambia already has a substantial copper industry, They host Vedanta Group's large copper mine and ranks 7th globally in copper production.
So it's not uncharted territory for copper mining. What else should our listeners know about Zambia and its place in the global copper landscape?
Well, one important point is that this deal isn't just about, like, securing present-day supplies, right? It's a strategic move to position India as a major player in the global copper market over the long term. And as someone, preparing for the civil services, understanding these long-term trends is essential.
It seems like Africa is emerging as a key player in the global mineral landscape, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The DRC, for example, it's already a powerhouse in the mineral world. It produces, get this, 70% of the world's cobalt. And it's projected to become the second largest copper supplier by 2030.
So we have India securing this massive exploration block in Zambia, and the DRC poised to become a copper giant. It sounds like the competition for these African resources must be pretty fierce.
Oh, you're absolutely right. China, among other countries, is also vying for, a piece of the pie. It's a global power play with each nation trying to secure its share of these essential minerals.
Speaking of power plays,
Yeah.
remember back in 2020 when former President Trump launched an investigation into copper imports and their potential threat to U.S. national security?
Yes, I do. That move was significant. It highlighted just how crucial copper is to, a nation's economic and strategic interests. The U.S. wants to lessen its reliance on foreign copper and boost its own domestic production to, well, safeguard its interests in defense infrastructure and technology.
And on the other side of the equation, we have China currently controlling over 50% of global copper smelting capacity.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power concentrated in one place.
Indeed. But even they are facing challenges. For instance, they're grappling with falling treatment and refining charges, or what we call TCRCs. These are essentially the fees smelters get for processing raw copper. This decline is, well, it's squeezing their profits and it's forcing them to, adapt their strategies.
So we have this incredibly complex web of global demand, domestic challenges, and international competition. It's a lot to unpack, but it seems like these trends are only going to become more important in the coming years.
Exactly. And for our UPSC aspirants listening in, this is precisely the kind of, interconnected issue you need to grasp. It touches on economics, geopolitics, and even environmental sustainability, all, key areas for those aiming to shape India's future.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into copper. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into the intricacies of these global copper dynamics. We'll examine the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for India. Stay tuned for more insights that could give you an edge in the UPSC exam. Welcome back to our deep dive into this global copper rush. Just before we paused, we were talking about how China is feeling the pressure in its copper smelting sector, with all that excess capacity.
Right. It might seem a little counterintuitive, but having too much smelting capacity, well, it can actually be a problem. It's led to this squeeze on profit margins, making some operations, well, less viable.
So it's not just about having the infrastructure, but it's about using it effectively.
Yeah.
What are the implications of this overcapacity for the bigger picture?
Well, we'll probably see lower utilization rates for smelters, potential, suspensions or even closures of some operations, and probably delays in any new smelting projects coming online. The market is essentially trying to rebalance itself.
It's like a game of musical chairs where some players are inevitably going to be left standing.
Mm-hmm.
But for India, the focus is on securing those copper assets overseas. Right? The Zambia deal, for example, looks like a strategic move to ensure a steady supply of copper amidst all these global shifts.
Exactly. Think of it like a chess match. India is, anticipating its opponent's moves and making sure its pieces are in place. It's recognizing that relying solely on imports, well, that could be a risky strategy in the long run.
And this brings us back to, the importance of this topic for our UPSC aspirants. These are real-world geopolitical and economic forces that, well, they shape international relations and influence policy decisions.
Absolutely. Understanding, how global supply chains work, the competition involved, and the potential vulnerabilities, it's crucial knowledge for anyone aiming to analyze and contribute to India's strategic decision-making.
Now, while securing these overseas mines is crucial, it also, it raises some important questions about the environmental impact of copper mining, right? Maybe we could dive into that aspect a little bit.
That's a key point to consider, absolutely. The environmental and social implications of mining, they're a critical part of this whole conversation. As India, expands its overseas mining operations, ensuring sustainable and responsible practices, well, that's going to be paramount.
So it's not just about extracting copper, it's about doing so in a way that minimizes the ecological footprint, right? What are some of the key considerations for responsible mining?
Well, minimizing deforestation and habitat destruction is crucial. Then there's, responsible water management to prevent pollution and contamination, and of course, ensuring the well-being and fair treatment of local communities affected by the mining operations. That's non-negotiable.
It sounds like a balancing act, ensuring economic growth
Yeah.
while protecting the environment and respecting communities.
Precisely. And this is a key area for our UPSC aspirants to explore further. Sustainable mining practices, environmental regulations, and the social impact of mining operations. They're all interconnected and crucial to a holistic understanding.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now to another aspect of this whole copper saga, the competition between the U.S. and China. We touched upon the U.S. concerns about relying on foreign sources for copper. How are they addressing this?
Well, the U.S. is taking a multi-pronged approach. They're looking to boost domestic production, explore, alternative materials, and diversify their supply chains to reduce dependence on any single country. It's about reducing vulnerabilities and, well, ensuring they have access to copper for their own industrial and technological needs.
And what about China? They're the dominant player in the copper smelting world,
Yeah.
but they're facing some headwinds too, right?
Yeah, they're grappling with those falling treatment and refining charges. The fees smelters get for processing raw copper. This decline, coupled with the tight availability of copper concentrate, it's putting pressure on their smelting industry.
So we have this situation where smelters are competing for a limited supply of concentrate. What are the likely outcomes of this imbalance?
Well, one possibility is that Chinese smelters will, they'll start looking to secure long-term contracts with mines, especially in regions like the DRC, Chile, and Peru. They could also focus on improving efficiency and reducing their reliance on spot market purchases.
So it's a dynamic situation,
Yeah.
with each player making strategic moves to navigate this evolving copper landscape. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's touch on another crucial element, the role of technology. How is technology impacting both the demand and supply sides of this whole copper equation?
That's a great question. On the demand side, you have, advancements in electric vehicles, renewable energy, and electronics, all driving up the need for copper. But on the supply side, technology is playing a role as well.
Could you maybe give us some specific examples of how technology is impacting the supply of copper?
Certainly, we're seeing advances in mining techniques that allow for more efficient extraction of copper ore. And there are also new technologies being developed for recycling copper, which can, help reduce the reliance on primary mining.
So it's not just a linear story of increasing demand.
Yeah.
There are efforts to improve efficiency and sustainability within the supply chain itself.
Exactly. And that's an important nuance to remember as you analyze this issue, for the UPSC exam. It's not just about the raw numbers, it's about the interplay of, economics, geopolitics, technology, and sustainability.
This deep dive has highlighted so many layers
Yeah.
to this global copper saga. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. When we return for the final part, we'll explore India's strategy in Zambia in more detail and discuss the broader implications of this global copper scramble. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short pause. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the global chase for copper. Before the break, we were talking about those environmental considerations of copper mining and how technology is changing things up on both the demand and the supply sides.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really important to keep in mind that India's journey towards securing that, that steady copper supply, it's happening against a backdrop of some really intense global competition. Let's zoom back in on India's strategy in Zambia. That 9,000 square kilometer block they secured for exploration, that's a significant step towards securing their copper supply, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's a massive undertaking for sure. And remember, this is on top of the Vedanta Group's existing copper mine in Zambia's Copperbelt province. It's clear that India is serious about establishing a strong foothold in this copper-rich region.
And they're not alone. Zambia has attracted some major international players like Canada's First Quantum Minerals and China's state-owned non-ferrous metal mining. This really highlights the global scramble for these valuable resources.
It's like a modern-day gold rush,
Yeah.
but with copper as the coveted treasure. It's interesting that India's Ministry of Mines isn't just focusing on Zambia. They've got nodal officers working in the DRC, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Rwanda, actively seeking out opportunities to secure more mineral assets. What does this tell us about India's long-term strategy?
Well, it tells us that India is, they're thinking ahead. They're recognizing that access to these critical minerals will be, it'll be crucial for their economic growth and technological advancement in the decades to come. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket, so to speak.
And this isn't just about copper, right? These regions are also rich in other critical minerals like cobalt, which is, essential for EV batteries and other high-tech applications. It's like a strategic bundle deal.
Absolutely. As the world transitions towards a greener future, the demand for these minerals, well, it's only going to continue to rise. This means the competition for resources will it'll likely intensify, making this, a key geopolitical issue to watch, not just for India, but for the whole world.
So to sum it all up, we've explored how global copper demand is, well, it's skyrocketing, driven by that green energy transition, the electrification of, well, everything. We've seen how India is facing a decline in its domestic production and is taking ambitious steps to secure copper assets overseas, particularly in Africa.
And we've also talked about the intense global competition for these resources with, major players like China and the U.S. making strategic moves to ensure their own copper security. And we've touched upon those environmental considerations and the role of technology in this complex equation.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into a really critical topic, one that has implications for, well, economics, geopolitics, technology, and sustainability. For our UPSC aspirants out there, this exploration has highlighted, key themes that are likely to pop up in both the mains and prelims exams.
Absolutely. As we move towards a future that's increasingly reliant on clean energy technologies and electrification, the control and distribution of these critical minerals like copper, well, they will play a defining role in shaping the global order.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. As India strives to secure its copper future, how will its overseas mining strategy impact its relationships with other nations? Will it lead to collaboration,
Yeah.
competition, or maybe a mix of both? And how will India balance its economic interest with environmental responsibility and social impact?
These are questions that will continue to unfold in the coming years. For our listeners, I encourage you to, delve deeper into these issues, explore different perspectives, and consider the long-term implications of this global copper scramble. The Indian Express article we've been referencing, it's a great starting point for further research.
Absolutely. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into critical current affairs. Until next time, happy studying.